Welcome to Fantasy Staircase Education's Vocal Theater, an Enlighten Moment. I am your hostess, Lucia Luckett-Kelly, a professional storyteller, drama instructor, and performing artist. I've created a story phrase: he rescues, reigns, or rules. For the month of June, I will share several multicultural stories about young and older men. Today's story is from Puerto Rico. I'd like to share a did you know culture. This is about arts. There is a strong artistic presence among Puerto Ricans, whether from artists formerly trained in art schools or self-taught amateurs. Serious students of Puerto Rican art always go to the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture in a Dominican convent in Old San Juan. It's the best source of information on the island about Puerto Rican arts and crafts. With its dozen or so museums and even more art galleries, Old San Juan is the greatest repository of Puerto Rican arts and crafts. Galleries sell everything from pre-Columbian artifacts to paintings by relatively contemporary artists such as Angel Botello, who died in 1986. The Galleria Botello at 208 Del Cristo Street was his former home. He restored the colonial mansion himself. Now his paintings and sculptures are on display there. Here are a few dictionary definitions that relates to the male characters I have selected for my June stories. The first word is preeminent. It is an adjective meaning eminent, above or before others, superior, surpassing. The word prominent is also an adjective meaning important, famous. And the other word that I will be including throughout the story is feral, of or relating to or suggestive of a wild beast, or having reverted to the wild state as from domestication. And now, let me explain. A feral horses are those who live in the wild but are descended from domestic horses. The only true wild horses live in Mongolia. One of the most unusual herds lives on the U.S. territory of Vieques, an island of Puerto Rico in the Caribbean Sea. Much of Vieques was once a bombing practice range for the U.S. Navy, but when the bombs stopped falling and the military base was converted to a wildlife refuge, tourists from around the world took it as an all clear to visit. Some came for the beaches, some came for the quiet, and some came to see the wild horses. Over decades, hundreds of domestic horses, many of Paso Fino blood, had been turned loose to roam by their owners. They gradually spread out over the island, reproduced, and learned to live among the citizens. Now they are not only part of landscape, they are also part of the island's allure. This comes from equusmagazine.com. The story I'm about to present came from DK's All My Shining Silver Stories of Value from Around the World. This is by Barbara Baumgartner. The Rainbow Horse, an old tale from Puerto Rico. Long ago in Puerto Rico, there lived a farmer and his 3 sons, Carlos, Pedro, and Juan. One morning the farmer said, "Last night a wild animal ate some of our corn." Carlos said, "Tonight, father, I will catch that wild animal. I'll borrow the hammock and take a rope to lasso the creature." His father agreed, and at sunset, Carlos went to the field and strung the hammock between 2 trees nearby. Then he sat down in the hammock to wait, but soon he fell asleep. When Carlos awoke the next morning, he saw that the wild animal had again eaten some of the corn. So Carlos went home feeling annoyed that he had failed. Then Pedro, the second son, said, "Tonight, father, I will catch the wild animal. Let me take the hammock, the rope, and the guitar. I can sing songs to keep myself awake." At sunset, Pedro took the hammock, the rope, and the guitar and walked to the cornfield. After he hung the hammock, he sat in it and began to play the guitar and sing songs. But soon he too fell asleep. When Pedro awoke the next morning, he saw that the wild animal had again eaten some corn. So Pedro went home feeling angry that he had failed. Then the youngest son, Juan, said, "Father, I will watch for the wild animal tonight. Let me take the hammock, the rope, the guitar, and a basket." Carlos said, "How will you catch the wild animal?" Pedro, "You're not as strong as I am. Do you think you will catch it in that basket?" At sunset, Juan took the hammock, the rope, the guitar, and the basket. As he walked toward the cornfield, he picked burrs and thorns and put them in the basket. Juan strung the hammock between the two trees. Then he stuck the thorns and prickly burrs all over it, except for the place where he would sit. Juan sat on the hammock and began to play the guitar and sing songs. Each time he began to fall asleep, he would fall against the prickly burrs and wake up. At midnight, Juan heard the sound of a horse galloping toward the field. He was surprised to see that the horse shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow, and that it had a silvery mane and tail. The horse began to trample the corn and eat it. Quickly, Juan threw the lasso, and it caught the little horse around the neck. Juan called out, "Stop, rainbow horse, do not trample my father's field. Do not eat my father's corn." The rainbow horse said, "If you let me go, I promise not to eat your father's corn again. And if you ever need help, call me by saying, 'Come, my little horse, come, my little rainbow.'" Juan agreed, and he let the horse go. Then he went home and told his father that the wild animal would never again trample the fields. But the two older brothers were jealous of Juan. So whenever their father was out working in the fields, they made him do all the work. "Juan, wash our clothes. Juan, cook our lunch." Juan smiled secretly to himself. They could order him around or call him nasty names, but he had a secret friend, the rainbow horse. One day, the two older brothers rode into town. When they came back, they were excited. Carlos said, "What an unusual way for the mayor to choose a husband for his daughter Isabella." Pedro said, "Yes, to win her, a young man must ride his galloping horse past her balcony and toss an apple right into her hands 3 days in a row." Carlos said, "Let's try it tomorrow." When Carlos saw Juan listening at the door, he scolded, "Hurry up, Juan, bring us our soup." The next day, as soon as Carlos and Pedro had left for town, Juan called, "Come, my little horse, come, my little rainbow." The horse appeared with a silver apple in its mouth. It laid the apple at Juan's feet and said, "Juan, would you like to toss this apple into Isabella's hands?" Juan said he would, so he climbed on top of the horse's back, and they galloped into town. Juan watched as Carlos rode past the balcony where Isabella sat. Carlos tossed a shiny red apple, but it went over her head. Then Pedro rode past, but his apple fell at her feet. Next, the rainbow horse rode past the balcony, and Juan tossed the silver apple right into Isabella's outstretched hands. But instead of stopping, the horse galloped away and carried Juan home. That evening, when the two brothers came home, they were arguing. "I wonder who was riding on that rainbow horse. He certainly threw that silver apple well right into Isabella's hands. I wonder if he's anyone we know." Juan was stirring his soup and singing a little song. "Is he a friend or is he a foe? Who he is, you do not know." Carlos called out, "Juan, stop that mumbling and bring us our soup." The next day, Carlos and Pedro set out for town. As soon as they were gone, Juan called, "Come, my little horse, come, my little rainbow." Again, the rainbow horse came galloping with a silver apple in his mouth. Juan quickly climbed onto the horse's back and rode into town. When they got there, Carlos was galloping past Isabella's balcony. This time he tossed his apple more gently, but it fell at her feet. Next came Pedro, who threw his apple so hard that it soared over Isabella's head and bounced off the wall. Then the rainbow horse galloped past the balcony, and the mysterious rider tossed the silver apple right into Isabella's outstretched hands. Again, the horse galloped on, carrying Juan home. That evening, when Carlos and Pedro returned home, they were grumbling and complaining about their bad luck. Carlos said, There were so many people. I got nervous and made a bad throw. Pedro said, if my settle hadn't slipped, I would have tossed my apple correctly. That stranger is stealing our good luck. Carlos said, yes, I wonder if he's anyone we know. Juan was stirring the soup and singing a little song. Is he a friend or is he a foe? Who is he? You do not know. Pedro said, Juan, stop that mumbling and bring us our soup. On the third day, when the two older brothers set off for town, Juan again called, come, my little horse, come, my little rainbow. The horse galloped up with a silver apple in its mouth. In the town square, a big crowd had gathered to watch for the mysterious rider and his rainbow horse. This time, Carlos threw his shiny red apple too hard, and it soared over Isabella's head, while Pedro threw his apple too softly, and it landed at her feet. As the rainbow horse and rider galloped past the balcony, Juan again tossed his silver apple, and again Isabella caught it. This time, the rainbow horse stopped in front of the balcony. The mayor came out and said, Juan, I see that you have won the right to marry my daughter. Carlos and Pedro ran up to Juan. They were jealous of his good fortune and asked, Juan, how did you do that? Where did you get that horse? Juan told them that how he had captured the horse as it was trampling their father's corn, and how it had promised that if Juan would let it go free, it would never trample the corn again, and Juan could call on it for help. The two older brothers understood that Juan's good nature and helpfulness had enabled him to win Isabella as his bride. They felt sorry that they had been unkind to him. On the day Juan and Isabella were married, all the people came to celebrate. Carlos and Pedro played the guitar while everyone sang and danced. And the moral is, good sense and a good nature bring their own rewards. It is a joy searching and finding different stories about people and their adventures. As a professional storyteller, I am creating a treasure of stories that I intend to share. Through that audio, live performance, or doing a video. I enjoy performing to audiences that begin at 2 and end at 102 years old. I had a great time being interviewed and expressing why I'm so passionate about storytelling. Take a moment and listen to Vent with Candy podcast on iHeartRadio and hear me tell an exciting African-American folktale by Virginia Hamilton. Just click the link below this story. If you were invigorated by this enlightened moment, I invite you to check out my website, fantasystaircaseeducation.com. That is fantasy with a PH. And listen to my podcast, Stories from the Heart. You can now download my first podcast, Feather Frenzy, for free. I look forward to sharing more Enlightened Moment stories with you very soon. Thank you.